The day is January 6th, 2020. Donald Trump just lost the election and his bid for presidency. But luckily for him, he and his team have been working on other plans. This manifesto is the most comprehensive summary of the events of January 6th. You may love Trump for his rhetoric, pro-weed and pro-gun stances, or even his character, and I personally would 100% be willing to vote for Trump if January 6th did not occur. Regardless, I will prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that January 6th was an insurrection and a subversion of the will of the people. This is the January 6th Manifesto.
Sundown. We're 7 strong, now I'm dead and gone. Cut off my wings by the break of dawn. I sang the song, now it's said and done. People are in a blow like I'm awful on. We're 7 strong.
Hi, this is future Charles Pellin editing this video. I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. This video took a lot out of me to make. Please join my Discord, go follow my Instagram, do everything you can. And if you're gonna leave a comment on this video, please watch the entire thing. Please subscribe and like and do all that stuff too. Check out my Twitch, I mainly stream. This is a one-off video because I felt like it needed to be made. Thank you. Donald Trump's entire January 6th plot starts with his belief in the 2020 election being stolen. This is his big lie. Everyone surrounding him knew that it was a lie, and his crew, referred to as Team Normal, told him time and time again that it was as such. To spread this, he had to make mail-in ballots seem evil. If you don't know, a mail-in ballot is a way for people to vote by mailing in their ballot instead of doing it in person. Prior to the election, Americans knew that there would be a red mirage. The red mirage is a picture of a Republican victory, even though all the ballots weren't counted. On election day, November 3rd, it seemed like Trump was going to win the election, but that's only because mail-in ballots were not counted yet. Democrats were more likely to use mail-in ballots because they cared more about COVID-19, which Trump's team knew. The clip I'm going to play is from Steve Bannon, Trump's advisor, speaking with his associates.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory. Right, he's going to declare victory, but that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail, and so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of that. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. We're going to have Antifa crazy, the media crazy, the courts are crazy, and Trump's going to be sitting there mocking, tweeting shit out, you lose. I'm the winner. I'm the king. And he'll be all over, he'll be going, where's Hunter? Is Hunter on a crack pipe? I mean, no, he'll be, because then it doesn't matter. Remember, here's the thing. After that, Trump never has to go to a voter again. He's going to fire Ray, the FBI director, and fire the he's going to say, fuck you. How about that? Because he's never going to, he's done his last election. Oh, he's going to be off the chain. He's going to be crazy. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
Agree.
I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be no. He's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
This is where the stop the steal rhetoric comes from. It was an effort to stop the count of the election before all of the mail-in ballots were counted, which would lead to a Republican victory. This is why, prior to the election, former President Trump made numerous statements discrediting mail-in ballots. On April 7th, President Trump claimed mail-in ballots are a very dangerous thing for this country because they're cheaters. They go and collect them. They're fraudulent in many cases. These mailed ballots come in. The mailed ballots are corrupt, in my opinion, and they collect them, and they get people to go in and sign them. And then they're forgeries in many cases. It's a horrible thing. The following day, April 8th, President Trump tweeted, "Republicans should fight very hard when it comes to statewide mail-in voting. Democrats are clamoring for it. Tremendous potential for voter fraud, and for whatever reason, doesn't work out well for Republicans." On May 24th, President Trump tweeted, "The United States cannot have all mail-in ballots. It will be the greatest rigged election in history. People grab them from mailboxes, print thousands of forgeries, and force people to sign them. Also forge names. Sub-absentees are okay, when necessary. Trying to use COVID for this scam." On September 17th, President Trump falsely alleged that mail-in ballots were ripe for foreign interference. At True the Vote, there's a group of people, largely radical left Democrats, that want election mayhem. States must end this crazy sending of ballots, also a gift to foreign interference into our election. Stop it now before it's too late. His team continued to use this as fuel to stop the steal. Tom Fitton drafted a victory statement to the president to read on election night. On Halloween, he sent the statement to President Trump's assistant, Molly Michael, and social media guru Dan Scavino. Fitton wrote that Election Day, November 3rd, was the deadline by which voters in states across the country must choose a president. Fitton argued that counting ballots that arrived after Election Day would be part of an effort by partisans to overturn the election results. This isn't true, though. Typically, states update their count as more votes come in. This lends credence to the fact that his team knew that they would lose once all the votes were counted. And as stated by the January 6th committee, President Trump knew about the red mirage. He chose to lie about it repeatedly, even after being directly informed that his claims were false. This was often the case in the post-election period. The president consciously disregarded facts that did not support his big lie. If we go back to Trump's claims about mail-in ballots, we see a common theme. He thinks they are fraudulent because of potential election corruption that could happen. Now, I'm 100% certain that you could use a mail-in ballot to rig an election. But the real question is, did it happen? And the answer is no. Luckily for us, a ton of these cases were brought to trial to determine if election fraud actually occurred. Let's break down some of the most notable cases. Most of the next section is paraphrased or directly quoted from the January 6th committee, but I have included several citations that you'll see on screen, and you can find a full link to citations in the description of the video. The Select Committee states, in total, the Trump campaign and allies of President Trump filed 62 separate lawsuits between November 4th, 2020 and January 6th, 2021, calling into question or seeking to overturn the election results. Out of 62 cases, only one case resulted in a victory for President Trump or his allies, which affected relatively few votes and did not vindicate any underlying claims of fraud and would not have changed the outcome in Pennsylvania. 30 of the cases were dismissed by a judge after a hearing on the merits alone. To start, in the case of Bauer v. Ducey, which took place in Arizona, it was alleged that the election introduced hundreds of thousands of illegal, ineligible, duplicate, or purely fictitious ballots. A federal judge dismissed their suit, finding it void of plausible allegations and sorely wanting of relevant or reliable evidence. Then the Arizona State Court dismissed Ward v. Jackson following a 2-day trial. The GOP-appointed chair found no evidence of misconduct, fraud, or illegal votes. All 7 of the state Supreme Court justices, which were appointed by GOP governors, upheld the ruling. In Georgia, a state court dismissed Bolin v. Raffensperger because the judge found that the complaint's factual allegations rest on speculation rather than duly pled facts, and do not support a conclusion that sufficient illegal votes were cast to change or place doubt in the result of the election. The judge was also appointed by a Republican governor. Similarly, a judge denied relief in Wood v. Raffensperger, which alleged that changes to the absentee ballot signatures made it harder to reject illegal ballots. The judge found no basis in fact or law to grant him the relief he seeks. The judge wrote that this argument is belied by the record, because absentee ballots were actually rejected for signature issues at the same rate as in 2018. In my home state of Michigan, a judge found claims of massive election fraud in the case of King v. Whitmer nothing but speculation and conjecture that votes for President Trump were destroyed, discarded, or switched to votes for President Biden. A Michigan state court rejected 2 cases brought against Detroit about systemic fraud in regards to how absentee ballots were counted. Then, in Nevada, a state court judge rejected election fraud in Law v. Whitmer, ruling that plaintiffs did not prove under any standard of proof that illegal votes were cast and counted, or illegal votes were not counted at all due to voter fraud, or for any other improper or illegal reason. In Pennsylvania, a federal judge dismissed Donald Trump for president v. Bukvar, finding that the Trump campaign had presented nothing but strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations unpled in the operative complaint and unsupported by the evidence. The dismissal was upheld by the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, which held, calling an election unfair does not make it so. Charges require specific allegations and then proof. We have neither here. That opinion was authored by another Trump appointee. Lastly, in Wisconsin, another judge dismissed a lawsuit accusing the Wisconsin Election Commission of constitutional violations that likely tainted more than 50,000 ballots. The judge ruled, this court has allowed the plaintiff the chance to make his case and he has lost on the merits, failing to show that the outcome was affected by commission rules about drop boxes, ballot addresses, or individuals who claim indefinitely confined status to vote from home. The ruling was upheld by a 3-judge panel of the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit, all of whom were Republican appointees, including one appointed by President Trump himself. In all, the judges who heard these post-election cases included 22 federal judges appointed by Republican presidents. President Trump and his lawyers were well aware that courts were consistently rejecting his claims. During a December 18th meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump, Sidney Powell and others, White House senior executive Eric Hirschman pointed out that President Trump's lawyers had their opportunity to prove their case in court and failed. Powell fired back, "The judges are corrupt." Hirschman responded, every single case that you've done in the country you guys lost, every one of them is corrupt, even the ones we appointed. During their December 27th conversation with President Trump, Rosen and Donahue refuted false claims regarding suitcases of ballots in Georgia, Dominion's voting machines in Antrim County, a truckload of ballots in Pennsylvania, ballots being scanned multiple times, people voting more than once, dead people voting, Native Americans being paid to vote, and more votes than voters in particular jurisdictions. As the officials debunked each claim, President Trump would just roll on to the next one. Donahue told President Trump that the federal law enforcement officials had conducted dozens of investigations and hundreds of interviews, and they had concluded that the major allegations were not supported by the evidence developed. Donahue and Rosen told President Trump flat out that much of the information he was getting was false and or not supported by the evidence. President Trump responded, "You guys may not be following the internet the way I do." As longtime Republican election attorney Benjamin Ginsburg testified before the Select Committee, the president's camp did have their day in court. It's just that in no instance did a court find that the charges of fraud were real. This was not the end, however, as he alleged that Dominion voting machines were flipping votes in the computer system or adding votes that did not exist. Now, if I need to remind you, Fox News, instead of going to trial, paid Dominion nearly $800 million for their election fraud claims. Why would they not go to trial if there was solid evidence it was true? Ask Tucker Carlson, because he likely lost his job based on the false claims. I cannot stress how important this was for January 6th. This was the basis for the entire riot that took place. And hopefully by the end of this, you will see that it was not a riot. It was an insurrection. Donald Trump tried to falsely subvert the will of the people and claim the presidency for himself. If his efforts to stop the steal wouldn't succeed, he had other plans. His former vice president, Mike Pence, was now in his sights. I'm sure plenty of you know about Donald Trump's call with Brad Raffensperger, Georgia's Secretary of State, about finding 11,000 votes in Georgia. In order to highlight how crazy this is, I'd like to play the phone call, and then later on we will revisit it to discuss the Supreme Court's ruling on this.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state, and flipping the state is a great testament to our country, because, you know, there's just, it's a testament that they can admit to a mistake, or whatever you want to call it, if it was a mistake, I don't know.
Turn to the Electoral College. If you didn't know, the American people only partially choose the president. The American people vote, and then state officials known as electors cast their votes on their behalf. Most states have laws stating that electorates have to vote the way their people vote, but Trump wanted to subvert this. Let's break down his talks with numerous election officials. To start, his false claims of election fraud proved to be the backbone to persuade certain officials to change their vote. He knew that his claims of election fraud were going nowhere, and him attempting to stop the count didn't work, so instead of dropping the issue, he started to develop another scheme. What if we got electorates to change their vote after the ballots were counted? Now he starts to get the ball rolling. Meadows recruited Cleta Mitchell to the team, who in turn recruited John Eastman, a name you need to remember. He is one of the key figures behind trying to subvert the will of the Electoral College. He sent a memo titled The Constitutional Authority of State Legislatures to Choose Electors to Trump's team, and then Trump held a meeting with Morgan Worsler and John Robinson, two Texas entrepreneurs, on November 10th. Worsler later tweeted that, "I told whole Trump team in Oval that state legislatures can choose the electors no matter what current state law or state courts say." John Robinson then sent an email stating that he asked to be printed out for the president to explain the move forward for what we discussed. The email stated that President Trump liked the plan we presented to use a parallel path of state legislatures. This is the blueprint for the false electorate scheme, which we will discuss in depth later. Let's discuss more about how Trump pressured election officials to subvert their votes. Between November 3rd and December 3rd of 2020, Trump's team contacted nearly 200 state legislatures to solicit backing for his plan. Nearly 300 state legislatures from battleground states reportedly participated in a private briefing with President Trump, Rudolph Giuliani, John Eastman, and others on January 2nd. Trump was urging them to switch their electoral vote because they had the real power to do so. Trump then held a meeting with unofficial state legislatures, stating that they could change their electorates. On November 25th, in Gettysburg, they held a meeting, and it was set up like an official one, but nobody was under oath. At the hotel ballroom, people like Giuliani pushed false election denial claims to the state legislature, and when Trump called in because there was COVID during the time, and he said that he couldn't attend because of that, the crowd erupted into applause when he restated the same claims. Giuliani was telling state legislatures that it was within their power to take back their electoral votes, even though it's not. In Pennsylvania, their electors vote based on popular vote. In Michigan, Giuliani held a hearing in which he called the Michigan election a con job and told the state legislature that they could change their electorate's vote. This was after a Republican-led committee conducted an investigation into election fraud and found no evidence of it occurring. Now, for those of you in my audience who would say that the government investigating itself proves nothing, are incorrect. If I didn't make this clear, a ton of these investigations were done by not only Republican committees, but also done by different competing branches of government with different interests. And all of that still turned up nothing. Also, to make it clear, these false claims of election fraud left really negative impacts on people's lives. There are a plethora of examples in which Democrats and Republicans who weren't with Trump's plan were threatened, stalked, and harassed online and in person. Other officials that assisted Trump include Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano, and he would pay for the buses used on January 6th. Mastriano was like an operative for Trump, trying to push to other senators to join the plan. Trump worked on his strategic communications plan. The plan involved pressuring 6 different swing states into switching their votes. Giuliani declared that they only have 10 days to execute this plan and certify Trump as president. The 10-day plan had been in discussion for 6 weeks. So what was this plan? The plan was to impose a nationwide communications outreach campaign to educate the public on fraud members and inspire citizens to call their state legislatures and members of Congress to disregard the fraudulent vote count and certify the duly elected President Trump. The primary targets of this campaign were Republicans in Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, New Mexico, and my home state of Michigan, all of which were swing states. The plan recommends organizing rallies and protests at governors' mansions, Secretary of State's homes, Lieutenant Governor's homes, and weak members' homes. The document didn't have any named officials, but a related document did, listing their targets as, here's a long list on my screen of different targets that were listed. January 2nd was a busy day for Trump. That was the day he called Raffensperger about finding more votes, and was also the day he held a meeting with the 300 Republican legislatures. It was hosted by Got Freedom, and its speakers included Giuliani, Eastman, and Peter Navarro. If I didn't mention it earlier, Giuliani is also a notable character that you must remember. Indicated that purported proof of voter fraud should serve as an important resource for state legislatures as they make calls for state legislatures to meet and investigate the election and consider decertifying their state election results. The Washington Examiner published, when Trump joined the call, he told the participants, "You know that we won the election, and you were also given false numbers to certify." It quoted him saying, "You are the real power because you're more important than the courts. You're more important than anything because the courts keep referring to you, and you're the ones that are going to make the decision." When Giuliani was questioned about this by the select committee, he said he didn't know the exact words, but that was basically what he said. Giuliani said, "We need you to put excessive pressure on your leadership where the real weaknesses and cowardice is mostly located." Navarro told them, "Your job, I believe, is to take action, action, action." That evening, Navarro stated on Fox News that these legislatures, they are hot, they're angry, they want action, and we explain exactly how the Democratic Party, as a matter of strategy, stole this election from Donald J. Trump. The event organizer, Phil Klein, had other event organizers send out an email after the event summarizing the goals. As elected officials of the House and Senate in your respective states, Professor Eastman laid out the constitutional imperatives for you. Number 1, assert your plenary power. Number 2, demand that your laws be followed as written. Number 3, decertify tainted results unless and until your laws are followed. Number 4, insist on enough time to properly meet, investigate, and properly certify results to ensure that all lawful votes, but only lawful ones, are counted. It also demanded that they sign on a joint letter from state legislatures to Vice President Mike Pence to demand that he call for a 12-day delay on ratifying the election. Now, what does Mike Pence have to do with any of this? It's his job and Congress's job to open and certify the Electoral College votes. This is the imperative of January 6th. This is why Trump needed January 6th to happen. He needed Mike Pence, his VP, to halt the electoral count and affirm his false electorates. This leads us into the tragedy of January 6th. In the morning of January 6th, Donald Trump called his people to the Capitol to do the right thing. He stated, "We have come to demand that the Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated." This scheme had been in the making for weeks. He wanted to change the electors in Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Trump then prepared his own false slate of electors that were not chosen for each of these swing states. These people have been charged and convicted of fraud. There are videos of them trying to go into state capitol buildings. They are not American patriots. On the morning of December 14th, the real electors met to cast their votes for president, in which President Biden would have won. But the fake electors also met and casted their fake votes for Trump. Now, this would mean nothing normally because these votes have no legal significance. First, to understand why Trump would do this, we need to understand how the Electoral College votes are counted. First, electors vote. Then their state legislatures certify their votes. Then Congress and the Vice President, who was Mike Pence at the time, count the votes and affirm who won the presidency. Donald Trump wanted Mike Pence to affirm the false slate of electors. This is the plot. The fake electoral votes were not certified by the states, and no one challenged the official ones, meaning that these votes could not have been used for the presidency. His plan was illegal and fraudulent from the beginning. He managed to do all of this by lying about voter fraud. He knowingly lied about election fraud, as highlighted at the start of this video, and tried every card in the book to get the public, Republicans, and his constituents to steal the election for him. His members told him that this was a lie. What truly exposed this to the American public was the Chesebro memos. While Eastman had a larger role in the days leading up to J 6th, Chesbrough had his own memos written down. I want you to go read them for yourselves. It highlights the entire plan of January 6th and what steps need to happen. It gives the legal and constitutional backing for Mike Pence to steal the election. That's what it does. Okay, that's the document. That's the purpose of the Chesbrough memos. Private messages between Mark Meadows and John Miller show the plot being built up. In the days leading up to the electoral vote count, on or about December 7th or 8th, Trump decided to go forward with the plan his team proposed. On the 13th, Miller told Giuliani that POTUS was aware of their efforts. Now, not everybody was on board with this plan. Clark, who oversaw his campaign's general counsel's office, was not in on this plan, stating he was out. His White House counsel also felt the same. Pat Philbin and Pat Capone would later describe the electoral plot as a bad theory. Now, instead of following the traditional means of election investigation, Trump's team decided to bring false electors to 7 different states. You must understand how vile this is. Even the Republican advocates who were recruited to be the faked electors expressed problems with this plan, as highlighted by Finlay in his testimony. The instructions provided by Chesbrough were used on December 14th by the fake electors. They falsely claimed that they were the duly elected and qualified electors. Then, after signing these fake votes, they were shipped to Washington, D.C. Then RNC Chairwoman McDaniel forwarded an email to Trump falsely stating that he had won the election in swing states. There was no official seal, violating election law, and in the states of Georgia, Pennsylvania, and New Mexico, the governor has to sign off on alternate slates of electors, which they did not, violating another law. Because they had no legal significance, the vice president could not use these to affirm who wins the presidency. Then the White House press secretary went on the Fox News on December 17th, stating that they had an alternate slate of electors that would be decided in January, which was a complete lie. Then Trump talked with Pence about the plan, and then Eastman sent a memo to Boris Epstein? I'll call him Epstein because it's kind of funny. Stating that in 7 states we have 2 slates of electors, disproving the validity of either or. Then further discussed in this email, which Chesbrough and him called really awesome, was their new legal theory about the Electoral College. Chesbrough recommended to Epstein and Eastman that Pence derail the joint session of Congress by stating that there were 2 slates of electors. Then the false electors met in Washington, D.C., although the Michigan and Wisconsin ones had to be flown out by the Trump administration. Now these false electors never met Pence on time, and that just may have saved the election. You see, because they thought that they had 2 slates of legal electors, even though one of them was illegal, the vice president could decide which votes were legitimate and which ones weren't. That was Trump's idea. That was his plan, and that's the plan that Eastman, Chesbrough, and Giuliani laid out for him. If that plan didn't succeed, the presidency vote could just be shot down to the House, which was majority Republican. I want to bring it back just a little bit. You see, his U.S. Attorney General, William Barr, found no evidence of election fraud. He said the apparent fraud was just the red mirage that I spoke about at the start of the video. I also debunked claims of election fraud that Barr continued to debunk. This infuriated Trump as his own DOJ appointee slighted him. On December 14th, Barr submitted his resignation as Trump pushed for his fraudulent election plot and the false elector scheme. Now, the new acting Attorney General, Jeffrey Rosen, was the victim of Trump's harassment into election fraud claims. He kept bugging him about investigating the election and finding more election fraud. But the previous Attorney General had investigated the election and turned up nothing. Then Jeffrey Clark enters our picture. He was the acting head of the Civil Division and head of the Environmental and Natural Resource Division at the Department of Justice. Someone that Trump would normally never speak to in his entire career. Rosen was not following Trump's plan, and in one of the phone calls, he brings up Clark, which Rosen found really peculiar. Rosen and Donahue were later called, in which President Trump pressed them, trying to reiterate that he felt they weren't doing their job. Every claim Trump brought up, they disproved, and this kept happening. Trump had an endless supply of false election frauds. Rosen, Donahue, Engel, Meadows, and Capone held a meeting on December 29th. This is where they discussed drafting a United States v. Pennsylvania case about election fraud. The DOJ members felt that they didn't have enough time to go forward with the case, as the claims had been debunked. Then, out of nowhere, a guy in Italian prison alleged that the Dominion voting machines had been hacked, which led nowhere. On December 30th, Trump called Rosen, pressuring him to go forward with the lawsuit. He refused, stating that the claims were false. President Trump threatened to make Clark the acting attorney general over Rosen. Rosen wouldn't take this lying down, though. Knowing that the election was at stake, he pushed to remain in his spot. You see, Trump liked Clark because Clark would have gone along in his plan to bring a case against Pennsylvania, which was completely fabricated and made up BS. In response, Engel, Donahue, and Rosen all threatened to quit, which followed by the rest of Trump's DOJ threatening to quit as well if they went through the change of leadership. Clark had been working on a letter to send to different states about election fraud, and when some members of the DOJ threatened to quit, they described this letter as a murder-suicide pact. Clark was literally just some random dude that Trump probably didn't know until he needed somebody to push his election fraud claims. Everyone on this team, everyone in his DOJ, knew the claims were false. And they all threatened to quit when he kept on pushing, when he kept on teetering the edge, when he kept on making them do stuff that they knew they shouldn't have done. They all threaten to quit. They all threaten to quit when a new guy tries to get replaced. That's what happened. Do you think it was actually official if his entire team threatened to quit after he tried to push false election fraud claims? Like, really? Really? You think the election was stolen when his entire DOJ, the branch of government that he appointed and handles investigating the election, threatened to quit when he kept on pushing? Of course you know what happened. The election wasn't stolen. I know I've been edging away from the main part of this video now. Let's talk about January 6th, and this will bring us into our conclusion. Vice President Mike Pence is the man who fell victim to Trump's wrath. He used to be his right-hand man, but on the day of January 6th, they turned to enemies. On January 4th, Trump, Pence, and Eastman held a meeting. Eastman argued to Pence that he could take the election into his own hands. Congress and the vice president could count the electoral votes. Trump wanted Pence to count the fraudulent votes as official, or state that he did not know which ones were real and which ones were fake, which would have shot the vote down to the House, where Trump likely would have won. Now, I want you to remember that the vice president's role is purely ministerial in nature, okay? It's not an actual role. Oftentimes, the vice president doesn't even show up for it. Instead, they just get the pro tempore to do it. That's how meaningless his role is supposed to be. Now, alternatively, Eastman said that Pence could have delayed the joint session of Congress, giving states time to affirm Trump's new electors, both of which, Eastman acknowledged, violated the Electoral Count Act. This means Trump's team, and likely Trump, knew that the fake votes were illegal. Pence, being the based American patriot he is, refused to go along with the plan, stating in no way that the Founding Fathers would have allowed the vice president to subvert election results. This is the cause of January 6th. In his speech, he constantly references that they need to get Mike Pence to do the right thing. What do you think that means? What do you think do the right thing is? Do the right thing is affirm the false slate of electorates in each of these swing states. The right thing, according to Trump, is delaying the joint session of Congress so the governors have time to affirm new slates of electors that were false and give Trump the presidency. That is the goal of January 6th. They were trying to pressure Pence to subvert the Electoral College. They wanted to delay Biden's victory. What was Giuliani's speech about before the riot at the Capitol? What was Giuliani's speech about before the riot at the Capitol? It was about the election being stolen by Democrats. It was about false claims of election fraud which have no merit. All of this was to rile up Trump's people into storming the Capitol in order to complete his plan. But Mike Pence held firm. And at 2:24, Trump infamously tweeted, "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth." It is by no means a mystery why the crowd chanted, "Hang Mike Pence." If they got their hands on him, they would have killed him. They likely would have beheaded him. They said this because Trump wanted the crowd to believe the election was stolen and Pence had to switch the vote. The entire plot was falsely based on the fact that Trump thought the false electoral votes were legitimate when they weren't. And the Chesbro memos, they falsely said that the president of the Senate, who was Pence, could declare which votes were legitimate. He couldn't do that. His role is ministerial in nature. It's not a real job. He doesn't actually have any authority. State legislatures and governors have the authority to affirm what electoral votes are official. They send them in, and then Mike Pence was supposed to count them in front of the joint session of Congress to make sure everything runs smoothly. Now, the main argument is that Eastman felt the ECA, the Electoral Count Act, to be unconstitutional, even though it wasn't, and that's why it's been practiced for like over 130 years. It's been hundreds of years, and nobody's challenged it until now. Are we being for real? Do you think it's unreasonable? They claim it conflicts with the 12th Amendment, even though it doesn't. That's the entire plot. There you go. That's what it is. The riot that occurred on January 6th had to happen. It was a completion of Trump's sadistic plan to subvert the election and remain in office. Mike Pence, the last frontier for his plan to succeed, refused because he was a stone-cold American patriot. He is the conservative that the Republicans deserve, not some unlawful felon. Trump sat dormant for 187 minutes as the riot carried on. His own family told him to call it off. He refused because he felt if he could pressure Pence into compliance, he would win, even though his entire plan was illegal. He knew the election was stolen. He knew that his people were marching for a wrong cause. People died on January 6th. That blood is on Trump's hands. At 4:17, Trump finally tweeted and told everybody to go home, to call off their peaceful protest. But it was too late. The damage was already done. The joint session of Congress was delayed, which further delayed the inauguration of President Biden. The following day, Congress and Pence convened and counted the real votes, affirming Biden's victory. I cannot stress this enough. Trump does not represent American values, much less conservative ones. Republicans should not ever vote for this guy. They deserve more. They deserve a better man to be president. They don't deserve an election stealer. They don't deserve that at all. If you support a man who tried to subvert the election, you are not an American patriot. But this event had an even deeper implication as well. Supreme Court ruling. Now, I'm sure you know that Trump has been given immunity on everything ranging from the riot to his calls with Raffensperger in Georgia. The Supreme Court has ruled that the president is immune from prosecution for official actions and actions that might be in the broader reach of that. This is pretty crazy to me. As highlighted by the opposition in the court, the president could order a SEAL Team 6 to murder any political candidate, as that's an official action the president can take. So if Trump, when he's in office, wants to kill Biden or Kamala out of nowhere, go ahead, I guess. It's so stupid I can't even comprehend it. Do you think the framers of the Constitution felt the president to be above the law? The Supreme Court is supposed to determine if stuff is constitutional. Where in the Constitution does the president become above the law? Where does that happen? Where is he immune from criminal prosecution? Right? Like, the Nixon v. Fitzgerald case kind of makes sense, because if a president is dealt with all these civil cases, he can't really do his job. But a criminal trial for potentially murdering somebody? That seems pretty important to me. Now, Jack Smith is still pushing for this case to be brought to the court. He says that that Trump was not acting as president during these actions, he was instead acting as an election seeker. This is a very captivating argument that I have to agree with, because it just makes so much sense. He wasn't acting as a president, he was acting as an election seeker. Now, in conclusion, President Trump tried to steal the 2020 election after trying to get people to stop the count in order to affirm his victory, his quote-unquote victory, after trying to get electorates to switch their electoral votes, after making fake electorates in order to falsely vote, and after trying to pressure Mike Pence, he resorts to his last cause, where he sends rioters to the Capitol in order to get Mike Pence to do the right thing. You need to understand how important this is, because this is the leading member of the Republican Party. 30% of Americans are completely and wholesale backing this guy. Okay, you need to understand that he is not an American patriot. He is not the conservative that conservatives deserve. They deserve a man who actually implements conservative values into the country. They do not deserve somebody like Trump who tries to steal the election from Biden. I guess this is the end. Go check out my other socials. I have a Twitch, an Instagram, a Discord you can join if you want to talk, debate, discuss. I'll do anything with you guys. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it.